Okay, everybody, welcome to yet another Nova Scribes. It's great to have you here. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome Jill Greenbaum. So, Jill is an alchemist. She integrates her deep knowledge of instructional design, accelerated learning, and visualization into all of her work, training, facilitation, and coaching. Her expertise lies in designing experiences through using her unique visualization process. She holds a doctorate from Teachers College, Columbia University, and is certified in appreciative inquiry. She's also the U.S. member of the Bikablo Global Trainer Team. We've asked her here tonight to give us a little bit on Bikablo. Jill, with that, over to you. What have you got for us?
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Brian. I'm hoping that everyone has paper and markers at the ready. And some of you might even have big paper nearby. Completely your choice. But we are going to be doing a lot of drawing because that's what Bikablo is all about. And so I am going to tell you just a bit about Bikablo. And so I will ask you, Brian, to spotlight me just because it's going to be easier to see when I'm doing the drawing and to share what I have behind me on the wall. Fantastic. So I'm thinking that some of you are a bit familiar with Bikablo, but let me start at the very beginning for those of you to whom it is new. Bikablo is a made up word, and I know a lot of people are like, I don't even know how to say that. No worries. Let's just talk about what the parts are, and they are builder, carton, and block, three German words because the company is based in Cologne, the iconic cathedral, if you've ever been there or know of the city. So, builder carton block turned into, there we go, Bikablo. And it means that we are working with pictures on cards and essentially they're pads. And if you have been around just a while and you have the original Bikablo books, spiral bound, they literally look like a pad of cards. So this is Bikablo 1. Looks a little different now, but I love my old ones. This is 2. Everything's different. This, we can talk about resources if you want, but I'm going to say if there's one I would get, and I'm probably going to say this 3 times so I sound crazy, but roll with me, please. This is one of my faves because one of the things you may know if you're familiar with Bikablo or have seen this style before is that we don't put emotions in the face. We put it through the movement of the body. And so the emotions book gives you a whole way of doing that. Super cool and fun. And I'm going to save the other 2 books for later on to talk about them. And so that's why I shared that with you because it is all about what Bikablo is. We are the academy. There are approximately 40 trainers in Germany working with maybe 4,000 people a year. Comes and goes, pandemic, economies, all kinds of things. The reality is we want to enable people to draw. And so we're all about improving learning, communication, and collaboration. And I thought I would just pop this up here because who doesn't love good examples of all kinds of things like how to be in a group and also how to be together. Whoop, and I'm off the screen. Let's go this way. I'm feeling so close, up close here. All right, what we know is that everyone in this room, even right now, starts from their own planet. So you're coming in with your own set of skills. And so I'm looking at my door as I say this. Please leave your inner critic at the door. You're trying something new, and I hope you're trying something new. That's the point of being here, right? Learning something new, trying something new. And this is the time to be gentle with yourself, right? So take good care of yourself. If you've got a beverage of whatever kind, feel free to enjoy it. Be generous with yourself in terms of recognizing what you're doing well. Ask for help when you need it. And so that might mean asking a question. Please don't leave your questions till the end. I want to help you in the moment that you need the help. And when I say moment, it might not be exactly that moment. It might be a half minute or so later. Or there might be something in the chat that Brian picks up and he's like, hey, Jill, we're hearing this question. And would you answer it? So I always want to do that right away. And more for training during the day, but could happen now. Please be 100% here or 100% away. So be in the moment right now, or maybe you're on vacation mentally for a few minutes or something comes up. Don't worry about it, but our hope is that you are always here with us all the time. Brian has given you a good sense, almost New York fast, Brian. I'm thinking maybe you're an honorary New Yorker. He's given you a good sense of who I am. What I'd like to do is know just a tiny bit about you. If you would drop in the chat where your feet touch the ground at this particular moment. And since I know that's an easy question for you to answer, well, I'll also share as you're doing that where I'm from. I am on the ancestral land of the Munse Lenape in Rockland County, New York, which is just above northern New Jersey. I'm then going to ask you to draw the answer to this question. What is the best thing that's happened to you today? Take the next 3 minutes and choose one thing and please draw it. And then you can share it if you want. You don't need to. It's completely up to you. I am going to drop the link to a Padlet into the chat in case people want to share their drawings. And that would be just sharing among us. It's not going to go out on social media. So I will be the official timer here for 3 minutes. She says, knowing that her phone is here somewhere. There we go.
Jill, I'm getting a 404 error on that Padlet. Can you double check the URL for that?
Oh, I can. Yes, I just
Thank
made
you.
it too. Oh, and you're so right. Let me go back and change that right now. Huh,
Thank you.
that's so interesting. Oh, you know why? There we go. It was that last little step. It was, you actually have to click save. See, that's what I did in my spare time earlier. All right, so let's take another go at that. It should come up just
Yep,
fine
that's
now.
working now. Thank you.
Fantastic. See, I knew there was a reason I had my coffee next to me. I just need to drink it.
And in chat, we asked for what was the question again? It was the best thing that happened today?
Absolutely. It's this, darling. Right? This is the question. What's the best thing that's happened to you today? And answers are often all over the map. It could be I snuggled with my cat. My son kissed me good morning. I had a great day at work, did well on a project. There are any number of possibilities. So take another minute. If you're so inclined, you might pop it up on Padlet, which is easy if you have it on your phone as an app. It's a little less easy, still not too hard to do it from a computer. And if you would care to share any of your answers in the chat, I'd love to see them. I'm not used to seeing myself in the chat, so I was like, wait, what? That Brian's a fast one. All right, so take another 15 seconds or so to finish up. We could also do a group shot. So the clock is winding down. I'm going to hear it shortly. So happy to hear your puppy slept all night long. That can be such a blessing. All right, the timer has gone off. I can hear it. I'm sure that you cannot. And so I'm wondering if you would care to put your answer in the chat. Also, if you would care to hold it up and show us what the best thing is that's happened to you today. And we might just do a screenshot there. A lot of drawing. All right, I can see Leslie's about to show us. Maria. Yeah, it can be tricky with background. Sometimes if it's right up next to your face, that works. All right, we're getting some drawings here. Rebecca, I'm not sure I want to ask. Would you care to tell us a little bit about that?
I had a explosion between the ice storm and the snowstorm in North Carolina, and all my sewer line came up into the house. So today we got a toilet, and I don't have to use the porta potty for the first time in 3 weeks. So
that is good news indeed. Fantastic. All right, so I just got in the way of everybody putting up their drawings at once. So let's put them all up. We'll hold them up there for a second. Brian, do you want to grab the screenshot or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, let me remove your stoplight. What's that called? Spotlight. There we go. Okay, everybody holding up your drawings on the count of three. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so
Super.
you've already started doing a bit of drawing, and I know that there are folks that are brand new to drawing on this call, meaning drawing in this way. There are folks that have seen Bikablo along the way, and there are people that have been in the field much longer than I have, as a matter of fact. And so, for those who have been in the field a while, I wanted to ask you to add a layer of complexity to the work that we're doing here tonight. And so anyone is welcome to take this on. But if you've been around for a while, I'd like you to start to think about if you were to create a criteria, a top 10 list, or a baker's dozen of criteria that you believe make for the best graphic recordings. And I mean in your practice, not when you're judging other people. And I say this knowing full well that I've already created something that I did a couple of years ago for the Visual Binge with the guys in Great Britain. But I'd like you to start thinking about what are your criteria and how do they show up? Because that may become a part of our conversation. So I want everyone to have an opportunity to be engaged at the level that fits them. Am I being clear about that? I just want to check in. What do you think? Yeah, okay, good.
Sure.
I'm a very visual person. A nod of a head, a thumbs up, all good. No, Candace is going no. All right, so Candace, and I don't know you personally. Are you new to the field? More been around for a while, or you've been around a long time?
No, I've been around for a while.
Okay,
I'm just not sure
so
what the ask is right now.
so and well, I'm not sure I'd put it as an ask, but that's okay. The idea behind this is that you are thinking about when you evaluate or assess your work and say, this is some of my best work. And you can point to the reasons that you're saying this. So let me give you just a couple of quick examples and I'll share mine later, but I don't want to share all those answers because I want you to think of your own because I don't want to influence you. But for me, it's all about communication. This field is, to me, about communication and not art. And so for me, quick and dirty drawing or simple, good communicative drawings are what count. All right. So that would be one thing. There needs to be a logical flow to the content on a chart. And that is, of course, dependent on who the audience is, which is a whole higher level discussion we're not going to get into. But those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. Is there a hierarchy of the lettering that you're using? Does that get us in the right ballpark? Fantastic. All right. So those are just some things that I'd be thinking about if I were, sort of around for a while or around for a very long time. Like, what are your criteria? When you look at other people's work, what do you say? Oh, wow, that's a total fit for what I'm talking about. Or, oh, I'm really learning something new and maybe I'll incorporate that into what I do. All right. So that was just a little tease or a taster for folks that are that have been in the field for a while. But let's talk about Bikablo and not too much longer because we want to draw. So I just want to start by talking about this book, which is Usmo, called Thinking with the Pen. So some of you may know this, if you know the Bikablo books. And what I love about this is really the philosophy, is that we are using the pen or the marker to help us explain in greater detail or flesh out what our thinking is or what our questions are, our plans, our strategies, whatever it happens to be. So let's start to do some drawing because while I know the description talked about, let's see, I've got it right here, that we'd be discussing structure, scale, proportion, color, and layout. We're going to do all of that, but we're going to do it within the context of creating drawings. So I'm going to pop some paper up on the wall and I'm going to start drawing. I will tell you that in Bikablo, we always, so you're going to learn some of the things along the way here. We always have a title for the work that we're doing. It always is horizontal. We don't write vertically or diagonally. And it doesn't mean that you need to do the same, but I'm just giving you some tidbits that you might not know from just observing people doing this work. And so for me, the title I'm thinking of at the top of my page is going to be Bikablo Fun. And so I'm always thinking about, once again, just tips along the way, how high am I hanging my paper? Is it comfortable for me? Because if I have to reach, if I have to struggle, my letters, my drawings aren't going to be clear. They're not going to be sharp. They're going to have a wobble I don't intend. So I'm just going to write in nice big letters about the size of my hand because I'm working on big paper. But I'm going to write Bikablo Fun, and that's going to be my heading. And look, that is a thirsty marker. I picked up a brother that wasn't quite ready. There we go. Bikablo Fun, we're going to give it an exclamation point. Oh, look at that. I'm going to go back and do something with that to make those other letters darker. So we're not going to tread into the territory of talking about markers too much, but these are the Neuland markers. This is permanent ink. It enables me to draw and write over it in colored markers without getting them messy, unless it's a really humid day, and then that could happen. But I love these darlings, and I'm going to work in the big one. And we're going to make some iconic, dare I say it, drawings in the Bikablo style right now. And so I'm going to give you a couple mantras along the way, things that I say to myself or I say when I'm training folks. And I am always thinking about a developmental approach. All right, so how do I look at something, or how do I deconstruct something to draw it? We're going to start with a light bulb because that's what was on the cover of the book, and it's made with the letters UZMO. So let's start with those letters. Now, I am going to draw a light bulb using those orders, those letters in that order, and then I'm going to show you another way of doing it. All right, so here we go. And I'm hoping you'll do this along with me. Because once it's together, and you're like, how did that happen? I didn't really see that happen. All right, U, Z, M, and O. Letters and marks that you make all the time. Just showing that you can do this because you're making marks all the time. Now, I will tell you that this isn't a bad light bulb. It's kind of cute, little chubby, all right? But if I want a better result, I'm going to do it in a different order. And so this is me saying you have permission to do this in the way that it works best for you. So I'm always going to start with a circle. And when I do it here, I started down at 6 o'clock, if we're imagining a clock, and went counterclockwise. Because that's a pretty good result when I start at 6. I usually get a better result when I start at 12. Right? And so sometimes, and I will tell you, circles don't always come close to perfect, right? They take some work. And so that's something to recognize also. And some days are easier than others or better than others. But I'm always going to start with the glass part of the light bulb. I'm going to add the part that goes into the socket. The Z is there for the ridges, and then I'll add the M. So one of the things that I'm saying to myself as I do this also, the mantra is size, sequence, and proportion. All right, so as we look at this, we can see that this piece is it's between 1/3 and 1/4. So we'll just say 1/4 in this instance. Because if you play with the proportions or you play with the sizes in some way, it's going to look like a mushroom or an ice cream cone or something that you didn't intend. Not bad things, but not what the intention is. So that is absolutely one of the things that we want to be thinking about. All right. And please feel free to come off of mute also if you have any questions. It's easier than me looking into the chat and also giving that task to Brian. All right, so let's make a few other fun things. One of my favorite things that I was talking about needing before. So a cup of coffee. I start to think about how am I going to get the best result for what I want to create. And so I could start with a line for the top of the coffee cup, but I'm going to start with another really familiar shape, a giant U. And then the line, or the top of the cup, whoo, listen to that, is going to go right across the top. Because if I draw the line first and I have to make the U match the line, it's not as likely I'm going to do it correctly. All right, so there's my coffee cup. I'm going to give it a handle, and it's going to sit on a saucer. And this is a teeny tiny gap that you see here, but that's what we do in Bikablo also, is that we show perspective by leaving a gap in between different objects or parts of objects. All right, let's do some more. Let's make a gift. So I am going to say this right now because I have this here. We're working with, or I'm working with, I'm not sure what you're working with actually, I shouldn't make a supposition. We've got a chisel tip, a round tip, and an art brush. I'm working with a chisel tip. The chisel tip has 3 different surfaces to it. It's got the tip, it's got the heel, and then it's got the broadest part. I'm always thinking about how am I holding my marker and which part of the tip am I using. So in Bikablo, we don't really use the round markers. We might use the brush tip a little later on, but we're always using the chisel tip. And I started to think about it because I'm about to make a square to make a gift box, and I'm going to rotate my marker every single time so that my lines always have the same thickness. Now that's just me being really picky. You don't need to be like that. You might want the verticals one way, the horizontals another, or you might want them all the same. But there I have a gift box. So once again, something that you're familiar with. Oh, you know what I left out of the coffee? Because my coffee is no longer steaming. But if it were, I would do that just to add the steaming that comes up. Now, if you're doing this in China, it's probably a bowl of noodles, right? So cultural context is really important. And that's something that's also a bigger discussion for another time, but certainly something to be thinking about. All right, let's do some more fun things. Not that we've seen any rain. We've seen a lot of snow here in New York, but if we, well, I just gave it away, so we won't do an equation this time, but if I were concerned about the rain, I'd be making an umbrella. And I would have 3 upside down U's, another shape you're used to making, and I'd make those first. Because if I'm making this larger U first, it's just like with the cup. I'm not sure these 3 are going to end up fitting well and fairly equally. And I need 3 and not 4 or 2 because the handle's going to come down from the middle. And these are minor things. And yet, if this is about communication, we want to ensure that people get what we're creating. So, you know, sometimes I'll see a balloon and I'm going to, well, maybe I'll do it the wrong way. So there's the big part of my balloon. That's where the knot is, this piece here. And here's the string. And the reason that this doesn't work for me is, yeah, you might get it, but really, it's not how it looks, right? To make a smaller one, that's how it looks. I don't want anyone stopping when they're looking at my drawing and going, that's not right, because it takes them out of the moment and it takes them out of the communication and the flow. So I'm going to pause right here just to see if you have any questions.
Not seeing anything coming up in chat, but you did have a couple of people who contributed what good graphic facilitation looks like.
Ah, okay. And is that a question?
No, it was, I think it was a response to your request where what was the criteria for a
Oh.
good graphic recording?
Thank you. Got it.
Hmm?
Amy.
I have a question.
Sure.
You say again why you want the gap and you have like this cup of like the cup floating on the instead of just like resting on the counter or whatever it's on, you have like that space there. Maybe I missed something.
No, I don't think you missed something. And, you know, if it were sitting on a counter, that's a good question because we often draw a bar scene, actually, or a cafe scene, you might say, with a beverage. And sometimes we'll have the glass sitting on the counter. But on the saucer here, it's to give it some perspective or to make it feel a little different. So I'm trying to think. So let's take an example. So let's say, here's another one for size, sequence, and proportion. So we're going to call that a caret, the bottom part of a speech bubble. And there's the speech bubble, right? And I tend to go, as we can see, counterclockwise. That works for me. Clockwise might work for you. Once again, it's about 1/4 and 3/4. And if you do it differently, it starts to look like something else. If I wanted to put maybe a thought bubble behind it, I'm going to do it like this. And I'm running right into my stuff here, but I'm going to stop. And what you're going to see there is a gap here and here to give it some perspective.
I see. Okay. To indicate something's behind it or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. Because our drawings are 2-dimensional. We don't make 3-dimensional anything in Bikablo. And so that's how we're getting some dimensionality. Thank you for asking. All right, so let's do an equation just for a little fun. Not exactly math, but still an equation. What happens if what might those equal? And we might play around with the orientation. I'm going to put it all the way over here on the other side of the umbrella. So what do we have?
Jaws.
We have jaws. We have a shark. Right, we have a shark fin. And the key here, though, is that we have 4 waves, right? And the fin is straddling one of the wave crests. Because if you try and put it within a wave, it's too squished, right? And so those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about. So that's another piece. We might also start to talk about people. All right, so if we're getting into figures, oh, you know what? Maybe we'll leave that for another page because we're starting to run out of room here. Let's do a puzzle piece before we leave this page. So there is the outline of a puzzle. So it's a square. And a number of U-shapes. And so as we do that, we recognize that if we're going to add another puzzle piece to it, they lay side by side. All right. So we would just extend as opposed to make another line. All right, so let's take a moment before we leave this chart. We'll do a couple of other things while we're here. Maybe we'll start to add some shadow and talk about that. All right. But let's talk about how might you use the shark fin in the water to represent something aside from a shark? Metaphorically, what might it represent and how might you use it in a drawing? So this is, okay, good, right? You can certainly put it
There's
in.
danger in chat.
Yep. Great. What else? How else might you use it?
Underlying problem.
Terrific.
Thanks, Jill.
Yeah. Fear attacks the unknown. Yeah. Risk. Terrific. Excellent. And what about puzzle pieces? Right? So we have these two together. We might add some that are off to the side or scattered around. How might that enter into our conversation? What you can't see, is it a shark or a dolphin? Okay, yeah, size of fin would probably indicate, but this is a drawing. We don't know for sure. Okay. So if we were talking about puzzle pieces or light bulbs, how else might we use that? Joining. Okay, great. Thanks, Maria. So it could be joining, team, connections, right? fitting together, strategy, cohesion, right? And if I had one here that was off to the side, my paper isn't quite big enough at this point, as we see them going off, but the reality is, what might that indicate? If we have some that are together and some that aren't, how might we use that? Exclusion, right? Yeah, for me, it would be part of training around probably diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Belonging.
Amy says, what's missing or what's next?
Yes, exactly. Terrific. Yeah, great. So there's some other good ideas in the chat. Thank you.
Something broke away, parts making a whole, what pieces don't fit and why, problem solving or building.
Right, exactly. So you could start to think of telling a story. All right, let's add some shadow and let's talk a little bit about shade, so to speak. All right, and so in the land of Bikablo, the sun is on the left-hand side in general. Now, once again, it sounds like we're in an argument here, but we're not. But it is. Pick a side, right? So for me, I always have the sun on the left-hand side because I don't have to think about it, and I always know where the shadow is going to go. All right. So literally, I'm just going to draw it in so you can see it. All right. So if our sun is over here, and it's casting a shadow like this. So we're just talking about a cast shadow. Imagine you're outside and the sun is shining and there are a variety of objects. We're going to, let's see, the kind of objects that we can talk about having a cast shadow. So this is going to be a quick intro to a variety of types of shadows. But a cast shadow might be a gift box, right? Three-dimensional object is going to give you a cast shadow. The sun is coming down. I'm going to use a gray marker to show you that the shadow is going to look like that. And the shadow starts from below the top edge and ends below this other edge. Now that's a cast shadow. We could have thought about it otherwise. We might have thought, we might have thought about it as a 3D object having volume, right? So that's probably another way, certainly another way of looking at it. And we could say that the coffee cup has volume, right? And so the coffee cup is probably made of glass or ceramic or some other kind of mug, right? And so our shadow is going to start up at the top pretty much at 1 o'clock and end over here at 7 o'clock. And there's a little sliver of the white paper showing through as if there's a glimmer because it's glass or ceramic. So these are things I think of Heather Martinez whenever I'm doing this because she and I did a training together years ago in Washington, D.C. and she did lettering and I did Bikablo and so we both took, what the other was doing. It was super fun. And she said, oh my gosh, I've been looking at the books all these years and I had no idea why some of the shadows were the way they were. Right? And so, because we use shadows in many different ways, and that's just another example, right? And so a light bulb would be the same, right? Same kind of material. It's glass, it's metal, it's ceramic. And so this is where we're working to create kind of a crescent shape. Starts at 1, ends at 7. And gives us a sense of shadow. The same would be true of a balloon. Right? Because there's probably a little glimmer there. It's not glass, it's not metal. It could be volume. You could go with volume if you wanted to, which would be right up against the edge, which would be the same if we were, let's see. Oh, we'll leave that for another when we do people. We'll do the same for volume. If we're going to talk about some shadow on the speech bubble or the thought bubble, we're going to treat those as more two-dimensional objects. The shadow goes around the outside. And once again, we're starting at about 1 o'clock We're hugging what's there. And we're doing the shadow. For our water, we're going to put the shadow underneath. The shark fin has some volume, or perhaps the dolphin fin. No one has ever said that. I completely love that. That's what I love about this, right? I've been doing this since 2018, and no one has ever said dolphin before. It's awesome. All right. Umbrellas. Yeah, definitely volume. All right. Puzzle pieces, a little tricky. 2D, right? So they're flat. What we know is that we're going to have some shadow here and in here, here and under here, here. Kind of tricky. So once again. So I want to pause there for a minute and ask for your questions. Because I know we have folks in the room coming from all different kinds of places.
So Jill, I know you haven't got there yet, but when you have two people, would you follow the same rule for shadow?
So interesting. So in the basic course, we would follow the same rule. If they were standing next to each other, because that is what I intend to draw a little later, is two people kind of facing each other and leaning towards each other. You might want to indicate a closer relationship, not just through arms being around each other. And so then you might put the shadow on the outside of both of them. So it has people looking more inwards.
Thank you.
Great question. Sure thing. All right, so take a look at your sheet and start to think of what questions you've got. We are going to put a frame around the whole thing because that's also typically Bikablo. And we're going to put a shadow on the frame. But I want to check in. Thoughts or questions? Yeah, Amy.
I'm guessing because your son is always on the left, right? That you tilt if you're going to tilt, like, so see how the balloon is tilted,
Yes.
right? And because it would be weird to have your shadow, right, if it was tilted to the left, I'm guessing, right? Like it just throws everything off, right?
Wow,
Like,
I totally love that. Once again, y'all are amazing. Once again, a question I've never heard before. You know, I have to say that even if it tilted this way, I would still be starting at 1 o'clock for the shadow, and so I just want to point that out, make it more obvious.
well, it makes me wonder if it's, and again, one of those things that your subconscious is like, huh, I don't know about that, right? Because like it feels like it's a counter flow, but I'm just throwing ideas out because I am like whatever's below beginner.
No, I just we do have generalizations. I don't want to say they're hard and fast rules, but it makes it easier to. It's like anything else, right? When you start to create some guidelines, you go with the guideline. But I tilt I tilt this way automatically. But I know if it went this way, I would still be putting the shadow at 1 and going to 7. So, are there any folks who are left-handed in the room? Maria. Okay, because sometimes folks who are left-handed prefer to put the sun over on the right because that becomes easier in terms of holding the marker. Because one of those things that people practice with a lot, as I did when I started, is how do I get this nice thin piece up here so it goes thicker and then thinner again. And it's really all in how you hold the marker, right? And how you lock your wrist. But my experience is folks who are right-handed do quite well in general with the sun being on the left. Folks who are left-handed flip it around and it's easier for them. And as long as you're consistent, you're not confusing people.
Thanks, Jill. So
Is that
speaking
making
of
sense?
consistency, let me if I drew a couple of people, and again, I know you're not there yet. I just wanted to make sure I understood this. So you would then potentially be shadowing somebody's face, right? So I've got two people who are facing
Yes.
each other.
Yeah.
And so the shadow would go on somebody's face in this case, right?
It would go in because it's volume, because our heads have volume.
Volume.
And so
Okay.
you've done it the way that we teach it in the basic course. When we get to the advanced course, we start to talk about some differences that we employ. And one of them is to indicate relationship. And so I will show that on the next chart just so it becomes more clear. And that's the beauty of drawing, right? It can become more clear.
Leslie had a question for you in chat. Can
Right.
you talk out the locations of the puzzle as you do that again? The
I
locations of the puzzle
can.
pieces.
I did it in New York fast, right, Leslie? I'm sorry.
I just mean like I was just asking if you could do it
Absolutely.
again, but saying like just
Sure.
talk as if you're thinking inside your own head about, oh, I need to go here and here because it didn't feel intuitive to me on the puzzle pieces. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
So, and you know what? I'm going to do one other piece up here that may help. So we'll assume that we're being helped. Oh, this is picked up the one that still needs a refresher. Okay. So let's just say that's a piece of paper, plain old piece of paper. I didn't even do the dog-eared corner. I'm going to start below the top, go across the bottom, and I don't ever cross the marker because I don't like a double stroke of a colored marker because it's heavier and that's not the look. So with that in mind, we're starting below the top here, and the sun is shining. So this is in the shadow. The inside, the top inside of the puzzle piece is in the shadow, but not the bottom because the sun's coming here. And then when we get to this edge, it's shadow. Underneath is shadow. Underneath here is shadow, but the sun is coming down. There's shadow here. Okay, and so then there's a little shadow here, but the sun is coming here, and there's a little shadow there. Yeah, you're welcome, of course. Thank you for asking. Okay, so yeah, we're just going to be really clear that the sun is coming down.
So one more question. The top
Take two.
bumps on each of those pieces, would they
Yeah.
also be shadowed to the right?
Yeah, they could be. Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
So
'Cause that's
let's-
what throws me off.
Okay, we don't want you thrown off. So we're just,
Just those
where
top
am I putting
bumps,
it,
yeah.
Leslie?
To
What
the
do you
right
think?
of the top, to the right of the bump, yeah.
For both of
Yeah.
these. But that is all. We could,
Yeah.
if we were really feeling it, we could put a tiny bit under here.
Okay.
But that would be it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. But that's the thing. We want it to make sense, right? We don't want people to get caught up in like, why is that like that? Right? Because we've taken them out of the moment. Excellent. All right. So one of the things we always do in Bikablo, and we haven't practiced this because most people have some experience with this, and if not, we can still talk it through for those that don't. But we always put a frame around our drawings. That's for us. So we also do not go over any lines. So that's that perspective piece again. So I'm going to start over here. Keep it really simple. You know what? I'm going to do something else first. I'm going to put a container. I am going over my sun because that's, those are sun's rays. We're not really seeing those, right? I'm putting a container around the title, and containers always go on last, right? Because as we can see, I've really filled up this page. And if I made the container first, I would have had less room to play in. Now you can do that. I mean, if that's your style, you can certainly do it. But we always put the containers on after we've done all of the drawing. Now, and as you can see, I am not going over any lines of anything that's been drawn. And I am going to make a frame around the whole thing. And as you can see, I'm not going to draw over this. I'm going to imagine that it's there and probably just do a little piece here. All right. And then so we also put a shadow on all of this. So we put a shadow on the container and a shadow on the frame. So here's my container around the title. Now, I'm using gray. That's kind of typical for us when we're training. In my work, my favorite colors are orange, yellow, and lime green with black because they really pop. And so I would do this a bit differently if this were something I was doing for my work. And for those of you that are thinking, gosh, it's really hard for me to get a straight line, there are a couple things to think about. You know, whether you're doing it up here, whether you're doing it down here, or even a straight line going vertically. Number one, practice, practice, practice in a very conscious way, right? It's not like Carnegie Hall and how do you get there? Practice, practice, practice. It is conscious practice every time. Every stroke is deliberate. All right, so that's the first piece. Another is that you look where you're going, not where you are, right? So when I'm making a straight line up here, I'm starting my marker here, but I'm looking here, right? So I don't follow my hand like this. I do this because my hand will follow my eye. All right, and I will say that horizontally and vertically, that works like a charm. Diagonally, not always so much, right? Diagonals are kind of kryptonite for me. Practice opportunities would be another way of putting it. All right. And so at this point, what I might also do just for fun, because who doesn't like to have a little fun, is I might go over my title, and we're not going to get into shading letters at this point. That's a little complex. I'm just going to go around all of them with orange to make it pop. All right. So as you take a moment to either look at this and or look at your own, what questions come to mind? Because what we'll do is I'm going to grab a fresh sheet of paper shortly. We're going to make some figures. Then we're going to make some stories. Any thoughts or questions?
You'd mentioned orange. You'd also mentioned a couple of other colors.
Yes.
What's in the color palette?
Colors, thank you for asking, Brian. One of those things we wanted to discuss for sure, and that is that Bikablo uses colors figuratively, not literally. So if we're making a tree, we're not making a brown tree trunk and green leaves. We're probably using black. That is our main color. We are always drawing with black. We are doing our lettering with black. It is rare that we switch to something else. I trained originally with Christina Merkley, and she had charter markers, and we were using our charter markers with, maroon and brown and dark green and dark blue and black, and they were beautiful, super colorful charts. We use color very mindfully. So our drawings and our writing is generally in black. We will use some color, a shade of gray, and we know that Neuland has 5 shades of gray. Oops. Oh, I have all my markers standing up and they're like dominoes when they go down. Sorry about that. And so we often use a shade of gray. I'll tell you, I like the 303, which is, I call it periwinkle blue. And so I like that. Yep, there we go. I like that as my shading color if I'm doing it for work and I want a kind of restrained palette. And then we're only going to pick 2 other colors. So we're going to have a black, we're going to have a shadow color, and we're going to have 2 others, 3 at the most. And we're going to ensure that whenever we're using color, that we are using it more than once. So unless you're saying, I'm a heart-centered entrepreneur, right? And you're drawing a picture of yourself and you've got that beating heart in your chest, you might only put red there because you want that to be a focal point. But you need to use color in a variety of places, and you need to use it from our perspective logically so people understand, like, why is this, and this orange? Are they connected in some way? Should I be paying attention? And so we're always thinking about how we're using our colors. So that was a quick tour. I'm wondering what questions come up for you as you start to think of your own style or other things that you've seen. Have I stunned you?
Looks like you're pretty good. I think you can keep going.
Okay. All right, so I'm taking this down. I'm going to put up a fresh piece of paper. I'm going to suggest that if you're drawing small, because I imagine most of you are, you're sitting in front of your computers, I'm going to encourage you to make it 2 or 3 times bigger and use up some more paper. In Bikablo, for basic, we're having people up at the wall almost immediately. And that's where they stay during the entire time because we're used to being small, so to speak. We're used to working small. It is harder to go big. Once you go big, you can always go small. All right. And so that's our thinking around that. So I'd encourage you to go bigger to start to feel what is it like to play with proportion.
Jill, just while you're hanging paper, I'll talk a little bit about the class you're going to be teaching on March 2nd, if that's all right.
Terrific.
So it's a 1-day training, and some of the areas of focus is that she's going to cover how to hold the pen, how to draw clean lines, how to structure the space on a flip chart. She's also going to go over graphics and text containers, also geometric shapes, objects and symbols like the few that you've seen here today. She's also going to go over the Bikablo method for drawing people, specifically roles, groups, and situations. So you get a little bit of figure drawing there. And then using some simple and fast options to color elements. That's one of my favorite things about Bikablo is that there's a very prescriptive way of using color there. And then she's going to pull it all together with combining all the ingredients into graphics, writing, symbols, figures, and color. And Jill, have I missed anything about what you're going to be doing on March 2nd?
No, I think you've done it. You do end up having a final project where you put it all together so that you can use it the next day if you want to. So it's all about getting it done.
Cool. Nancy has a question for you in chat. Does Bikablo also tackle lettering?
Yes, absolutely. So that's part of day 2 for us. We absolutely get into lettering because so a couple quick thoughts about lettering, and that is we are human. We have our own style of writing, and we don't make fonts. We make letters, and we need to make them though so that other people can read them. And so we practice with doing uppercase and lowercase lettering. We practice with pangrams, which are super fun, and we have some crazy ones when we do it. We also get into a variety of types of headlines and the ways that you construct letters. And then there's also the use of color as you're doing it. All right. And so all of those things come together. Yeah, critically important. And we also, the rabbit hole I started to go down was how we also work to create text packets. So we reduce the amount of text. Someone's saying something and it goes on for a very long time. We do our very best, although we are humans, we all have bias, all right, in terms of what we're listening, but we do our best to take what they have said and put it up on the wall in the way that it was said. Right? We don't wordsmith, we don't change things up, but we keep it tight. So our text packets are maybe 5 to 7 words. All right. So that can be challenging. That's a lot of work. All right. Mm-hmm. And I know there are folks in the room that do that kind of thing. All right. More Bikablo. Right. And so I also just did this little piece here where I wrote in script. Oh my gosh, right? Like not everybody can read script these days, quite honestly. And so the only time I would ever use script is in a headline. And I would be sure that I had said it first and that I referenced it a lot, right? So that it was very clear to people.
Oh, you saw it. Leslie's got a question for you in chat. Mm-hmm. Why don't you read the question just for the recording, please?
Yeah. Well, it's out of my view now. That's it. So, my question is just that since I'm new to Bikablo, but I do a lot of graphic recording, are there certain kinds of, because it has some formalities to it that make it very clean and essential, are there certain types of meetings, let's say that where I don't facilitate, I'm only graphic recording, I'm not training or facilitating. So would you say that it would still be pretty applicable to like a really fast moving, multi-person conversation? Do you still apply the same principles where you don't really have time to think too much? You just capture. Thank you.
Great question, Leslie. And so the answer is yes, I do. And we also have a style of drawing, dare I say it, that's called quick and dirty. And so it's different. So an example of that, thank you for asking about it, would be, for instance, our speech bubble, right? So we made it like this, right? And actually my proportion's a little off there. Good to make a bad example, right? And so this is a little too big, right? We would want this to be a little smaller. So let's take a look at that, right? But the reality is if we were doing that quick and dirty, we would just be doing this. We would be writing the text, whatever it is first, right? So text always comes first. We're going to do this and we're going to do this. That's it. Right? So we just simplify anything. It gets down to brass tacks. I will say, and this is personal, that one of my least favorite graphic recording gigs is when it's a panel. Like I don't do that work. Not my thing. Because, and I've done it and I think I've done it quite well, but I have to think a lot harder in terms of, because honestly, what we know is that people often don't answer the question. So even if everybody's got the same question, the answers end up being all over the place. It's got to be, I ask for, once again, this is a practice piece, but got a lot of practitioners here, so let's talk. The kind of work I do is not like my good buddy's Mark Korsak. He's going to drop in, he's going to do his thing, and he's in and out, right? For me, I'm going to have a pre-planning meeting with you. I'm going to get notes. I'm going to know what's going on. I'm going to have vocabulary. I'm going to have their vocabulary, which is words. I'm going to have my visual vocabulary, which is a match, right? I'm going to know their color scheme. I'm going to know all those things before I even walk in the door, right? And then I'm going to be prepared for that. So when I did a panel for Berkeley College in New Jersey, and there were 4 women speaking, I had already decided that I was going to use multiple colors for text to make it easier to understand, right? So one speaker always had the dark blue. Somebody else always had the maroon, all right? There was always the question and their answers went around it. So whether they answered the question or not, I put what they said next to the question that they were asked, all right? And so I don't find that personally as satisfying because they're answering a direct question. It's not generally as visual to me as some of the other things that I might record. All right. But I will tell you, I've created, because I want people to understand how flexible this work is, not just Bikablo, but being a graphic recorder, a visual facilitator, is that you can use these skills in so many different ways that I have a dozen different examples in a file. Like I use it in my coaching. I use it in my facilitation. Just all these different ways. I use it for strategic planning. And I show examples. I draw people's end of life wishes, right? Which is literally a graphic recording of what people are thinking. But it's kind of different. And a lot of people just don't think like, well, I don't know how I'd use this. I can tell you, right? Yeah, great. Super. So thank you for asking that question. We do have ways. And in fact, speaking of other programs, Frank Vessler, who is the global team leader, will be coming to the US in May on the 4th and 5th to offer visual process mapping, which uses the quick and dirty technique because it is about illustrating the entire process. And so I'm not trained in that. So I'm going to be there taking it and I can't wait. Yeah, super fun. Yeah, that'll be in New York in person. Super cool. Okay.
Where can people find out about that one, Jill?
So that one, I have been posting on LinkedIn and Instagram, but also my website, which is my name, jillgreenbaum.com/calendar. She says, quite sure that she's got it up there because I've been talking about it for so long with him, planning it. So yeah, I'll double check that, but I'll make darn sure that if it's not there, it's up there tomorrow. But I have been giving people information on it. So let's talk about people, because here's another opportunity for size, sequence, and proportion. And I'm going to show you the way we teach it in Bikablo, and then I'm going to show you the way that I do it, which is similar but different. All right, so here we go. And these are called the OU people, because we also have, as Brian has been drawing, the more squared off people. Okay, so OU, because here's a giant U. Oh, shoot, I went straight to my way. Look at that. Okay, this is the way you would learn it. This is the way I will teach it on Monday. We'll start with a giant U. And that is the torso. And that is, we'll keep the math easy here. We're going to say that this is 2 units. All right, think gridded flip chart. It's 2 squares. All right. Then you're going to add the legs, which are another 2 units. And then you're going to put the head on, and the head is going to be 1 unit. And so what I find is that I sometimes get an unsightly hitch at the bottom of the torso, and I don't like that. So I just make a giant U to start with, right? Make it easy. So I start way down here, I go all the way up here, and I know that's the body and the torso, right? And then I pop the head on, and we have, as we talked about before, where's my happy blue marker? We have that gap. We don't draw in the neck. The challenge here is that you put the head in the right place, right? Because if it's too far away, it looks like a balloon that's floating away. And if it's too close, it feels kind of squished, at least to us that are doing it. And I will say, I have found for myself that if I make the head first, the body goes crashing into it. It's like a train wreck every single time, right? So you learn things about yourself along the way. All right, so here's our body. And if you stood up, you would recognize that your arms go way past your torso. Right? So people tend to make arms that are too short, but you need to make arms that come to here. And so otherwise it looks kind of like, you know, a snow angel or a penguin or something. And you'll also notice, very importantly, that I just have so many markers here. You'll notice that the arms are always at the top of the torso, right? Because what we do not want is arms that are. So this is just the torso because it's a human body. It sometimes represents enough. We don't want arms coming from here. That is not right. All right, so we don't want to do that. So what we might do to what Brian was talking about earlier is we might have 2 people that are facing each other. And one of them might have an arm, and you know, the arms have to be pretty long. Once again, we don't want to forget that. Maybe this person even has an arm going around here, another arm here, and you might do their arms that are in here, or you might not, because we're getting that it's humans. And we're going to add the shadow, as Brian was asking about. Now, typically, we would do it like this. The shadow goes in the head, partially, right? And along the side, but just to the torso. We don't do it all the way down the legs. So that would be the way we teach it in day 1. But in a more advanced class, if we wanted to show relationship, we might do this. They're leaning towards each other. All right, so let's do some more figures and use what you have learned along the way. So here we've got a person in my technique. I'm a huge fan of arm on the hip. Delivering a gift, right? So simple. Or if perhaps feeling overworked, no more, right? Or let's do something fun. Celebration. That is a slightly large head. And the reality is you still know what it is, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. It needs to be good enough for recognition. And we know that, right? Our brains are so advanced that a circle, 2 dots, and a U shape, smiley face, human being, right? That's what it's representing to us. All right, so let's talk about some other possibilities here. One of my favorites is sort of that pensive look, sort of hand to chin. So I'm hoping you're thinking about size, sequence, and proportion. I like this, like, oh, I'm thinking. And I should have, so here's a perfect opportunity to teach you what happens when you're human and make a mistake. So I'm touching the face here, and I already told you, like, let's not do that. Let's do this differently. I would take out some label paper and cut a tiny sliver. And I would put it in between so that you could see there was a gap between the face and the hand. All right. And once again, if I were doing it quick and dirty, I might just let it go. I might clean it up later. It's not about perfectionism for me. It is about good enough to communicate effectively. And that's the key. So I'm wondering what thoughts or questions are coming up for you as we look at people and making stories.
Why doesn't Bikablo draw bottom hips? And I'm thinking mostly about their kind of rectangular people.
I don't know. I could certainly ask Frank and maybe get that answer. I certainly the emotions books, though, you're right, as I have it here right next to me. Well, on the cover, I mean, we can see, but that's a seated position.
Right.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. If we look just at the back, right? When they're standing straight, they don't have them. When you're moving, like you've got a leg up or you're jumping or something like that, you're going to see the hip joint.
Mm-hmm. I guess it's more like the connecting line. Like if you've got a connecting line for the shoulders, I don't know, it just always struck me as a little bit odd that there wouldn't be a parallel line connecting the bottom of the hips.
How would you draw that, Brian?
Yeah. So I'll do a quick demo. Here's sort of your typical, whoops. See, I just do it automatically anyway. Here's sort of your typical Bikablo person
Yep.
with the open hips like
Uh-huh.
this.
Yep.
Okay. And I might draw it exactly the same way. I would just close that line down there.
Oh, okay. So that's what you're talking about. You're talking about closing the line.
Yes.
You know what? We put clothes on people. Dare I say it? And when we put clothes on people,
Close on people. Okay.
we do put clothes on people. Actually, one of my favorite books. That's the third time I'm saying it, right? If anyone's counting, yeah. One of the posters book is to me the most beautiful book, and I'm looking now for. I've never gone looking for clothes before. I have to admit that. Yeah, I'm not seeing it here, but I've certainly seen it in other places where people have shirts and they have dresses and they have skirts. You know, it could be the Usmo book. And I have to say, one of the things, not only is this about thinking with the pen, but if you're new to the field or if you don't have a real grasp, because as Brian was saying, there's a bit of controversy in the field as to what is a graphic recorder and what is a graphic facilitator and what is a sketchnoter, right? All of that kind of thing. So if you want Martin Hausman's view on that, one of the founders of Bikablo, along with Karina Anton's, this is the book that's going to give you his perspective. I happen to agree with it, but oops, I just saw clothing in there. But there's definitely some folks in here. Yeah, so here we go. We've got, right, so this just happens to be shirts, but we have shirts and people, we have pants, we have dresses, we have those kinds of things. Once again,
Okay.
for me, I'm doing that more when I'm doing illustrations for people or I have more time and energy. But once again, if I'm graphic recording, there may be a lull or there may be time in between sessions, and that may be when I'm taking out the pastels and the colored markers and I'm using color in a different way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What other thoughts are you having about people or making stories? What stories do you want or need to tell? And what do you need to know to do that? Do you want to talk about getting together for one of the, I have quite the collection of drawings next to me, and one of the ones I got out, which I didn't share with you, was a welcome sign that just has a number of people, you know, in a beautiful U shape, so people's bodies, and everyone has their arms up and they're all linked, right? That takes a little thinking, right? Not too hard, but super fun. Maria, so asking about expressions. Yes, and so Maria, we don't put expressions in the face, but you know what? I have an example. Hold on one sec. I have an example of, and it doesn't have faces, but it could, and that would be something that we do. We do the emotions matrix in day 2. Um, we tend to use icons and graphic elements and put arms and legs and bend them in certain ways to indicate, and you could put faces. I mean, I do have another whole sheet, I don't have it in front of me, but where I put faces in puzzle pieces, right? So our faces or our expressions end up in these kinds of elements, whereas if we're showing emotions through the body, which is that whole book that I was sharing with you, this one is, you know, as you're drawing, if someone's crying or they're upset, their body is hunched over. If they're happy and ecstatic, their legs are up in the air along with their arms. So it's all about the body movement, and that's how we're expressing it.
Jill, I got a difficult question for you. So I
Uh-oh.
was doing some graphic recording once, and I was in a hurry because there was a lot of content coming quickly. So I was, the Bikablo figures are the fastest ones to draw. I don't think there's anything quicker than that. And after the fact, I had a pretty irate participant come up to me and accuse me of not showing enough diversity. So how do you manage that? Because, if I take a look at the, people that you've got behind you, I mean, that's about as generic as it gets, right?
Yes, and I have to say, and I didn't pull this, I will during the training. I have a whole page, and the diversity that's shown, though, is around the clothing that they're wearing, the hair that they have, the jewelry that they have on. We do not ever, and that could have made it onto this chart also, and I might have it over here. Let's take a peek at another figures chart. No, I don't, but you're seeing other kinds of figures representing an audience and team and that kind of thing. We don't represent people's size. We also don't represent skin color. We do hair, we do jewelry, we do profession. And it is, once again, a topic within the field that I think is really important for us to discuss. I think it's also important, of course, when we're with clients, to have that conversation with them about what our style is and it isn't, and what their comfort level is with that, and if they want it to be any different, right?
Thank you.
But I would be, honestly, the last person that would ever go towards size. And what we haven't talked about, but it's also a part of diversity, is we do show whether a person is in a wheelchair or they have crutches or they need some other kind of assistance because of a disability. So we will show that. It's different. Yeah, it's huge. I think Sam Brad actually has done some really good writing on that, and it did come up at a number of IFVP conferences. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I want to read what's in chat. So Leslie says, in all my drawings and what's appropriate to most all my clients is to show diversity of people in all ways. So aside from using multicolored markers, I also sketch differences that are clear in body sizes and types. Kathy says, new to drawing, how to show and scale in a work situation like at a computer or meeting around a table. Jill?
Sure thing. So Kathy, tell me a little bit more how to show and scale in a work situation. Are you talking about how to bring this to other people, or are you talking about literally how are you drawing?
Like things to consider when drawing it on the paper. Yeah.
Okay, the things to consider when you're drawing it on the paper.
Yeah, so I know I draw like the table's huge, the people are small, like, or how do you show the computer aspect with the people?
Right. We're going to work to keep everything in proportion. So for me, if it's a computer, it's going to be in relation to, it's going to be probably like half the torso of a person, right? If it's a computer screen. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you. It does.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you're making a statement like the table was huge and people were on opposite sides of it, that's also a message in and of itself, right? You're drawing what you see and what you hear and not interpreting, which is adjacent to what you're talking about, I think.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Yeah, the other piece, one of those things that I'm sure folks know if they're working on an iPad or some other kind of tablet is, for me, when I was learning, my kryptonite was, another type of kryptonite, was that I never closed my containers. So I'd be making squares, pieces of paper, books, all kinds of things, and it wasn't quite closed. And if you do that on an iPad, your color leaks out all over the place and doesn't stay where you want it to go. So it became a really good lesson in terms of being careful about what I was doing. And the trick that I found also, so here's a tip to take, is that I'm usually I'm doing headlines in the big one, so the very large chisel tip. I am doing most of my drawing and writing in the number one, which is smaller. And if I need to correct the big one, I'm using the number one to do it. Like I didn't close a corner, I'm not going in with the big one because I'm going to make a mess. It's too big. If I am using the number one and I didn't close a corner, I'm taking the fine one and I'm fixing it, right? Because I don't want to be there messing with the tape because I didn't make it quite right and I made the situation worse by not having the right tools. So having your tools at the ready, and knowing that you need label paper, that you need whatever it is that you need, that you're prepared with it. Yeah, tips of the trade. And so, oh, you know what? Let me drop in the chat right now, if I may. Yep, I can. I am going to share with you my ideas around assessing our work. Okay. So I'm going to drop this in, and that way you can see it and or it can go up on the screen. But this was one of those things that might have been going on in the back of your mind if this is. So what you're looking at is something like this. And I could probably also put it up on my desktop and share a screen, or I'm sure Brian is doing things behind the scene that make all this happen. Do you want to see it bigger, or are you all seeing it big enough? So I can certainly bring it. What's your pleasure?
We posted it in the, it's posted in the chat.
Right. I'm just not sure it's big enough. That was my concern. So let me just talk you through it because you can always download it if you want to. But as I start to think about assessing the work that I'm doing, I'm thinking about the key of clear communication, right? So that is my goal. And that means that I'm going to consider the layout. So for me, this is fairly typical, although this is very Jill-esque, right? There's a lot of color going on. But the reality is that the main idea is in the middle and the ideas radiate out from it. So if you're familiar with mind maps, this is going to look pretty familiar to you. But I'm going to think about layout. And then in blue are some of the details that I think about with layout. I'm going to think about how I'm using color. Is there a logic flow to what's appearing on the page? How's my lettering? Right? So the handwriting that we talked about. What's the balance between words and drawings? Right? So that's over here. Right? Because I don't want it to be too text heavy or too icon heavy. And especially, who am I making this for? Is it people in the room? So we've got a common vocabulary, they know what happened? Or is it going to go out to everybody on the mailing list for an organization and they weren't there? So I have to be very careful about how I'm using iconography that is understandable to everyone. Like a light bulb is an idea. A thunderbolt might be an idea, or might be innovation, could be any number of things. So how am I handling the words that I'm using? What kind of containers am I creating? All right. How am I incorporating graphic elements into what I'm doing? Right. And in essence, you know, is my execution, so to speak, in a good way, is my execution or the work that I'm doing really in service of what is being said and what is being done or what I need to convey? So these are my criteria, right? So you've got about 10, you've got some big topics there. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you've got almost 10 big topics, and then you have subtopics within them. Like, how does that show up for me, and what do I think is important? Because I can really appreciate the beauty of some of my colleagues' works because of all the color or the way it appears on a page. And yet if I don't understand it, and it's supposed to be about communication, I'm stuck. And so I'm just going to put that right out there. That's how I'm coming to it. What are your thoughts or comments in the few minutes that we have remaining?
So Jill, where can
Yes.
people go to learn more?
Well, where you could go to learn more is certainly the Bikablo site has some information there. you could join a training, as we'll be doing in person in McLean, Virginia on Monday. There will be the visual process mapping training that Frank will be doing in May. There's also, if you're going to Conference of the Americas in Monterrey, Mexico, which is being hosted by the International Association of Facilitators, I will be running, hosting, facilitating the Bikablo Day 1 training there also. And so these are places you can go. And I always am posting on my calendar page when I am doing more trainings. And I do coaching for folks that are at the level where they're like, oh, I want to change my game a little bit. I need somebody to put new eyes on this. I need someone to move and shift me in a different direction. That's the kind of work that I really enjoy also.
Love it. Thank you so much. Jill, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. But before I do that, let's give Jill Greenbaum a big Nova Scribes. Thank you very much. Jill, it's great to have you.
My pleasure.